My name is Linda Johnston, and I'm the Director of Social Services for Tulsa County. Today I'm here with Reverend J. Malcolm Phipps of Bethel Seventh-day Adventist Church, who on March the 30th incurred the wrath of Mother Nature. Their church family and their church took a direct hit of a tornado. Reverend Phipps is going to tell us about his experience that day.
We were gathered for midweek prayer service on March the 30th, and we had just finished our song service, and we had started our testimony time, and the alarm started going off on people's phones in church, and then the sirens went off. And so the member said, "Well, Pastor, do you think we need to just end the service and go home?" I said, "Well, we don't need to go anywhere. We're in a cinder block church. We're probably safer than anybody else right now. What we need to do probably is get out of the sanctuary." And just at that point, we started to have prayer, and then the roof started coming off. And so we ran out into the lobby, and then the front of the church fell down in front of the church doors. And that was just after one of the members had come in. If she had been a minute later, she'd have been buried under those bricks. Then we moved to an alcove. There's just an alcove is a little area that was almost completely cement, cinder block. And we huddled in there and continued praying in there. Some of us had our hands over our heads and whatever to try to protect ourselves, but we just huddled in that spot, and that part did not collapse. And in the meantime, the upstairs fell down into the church, and it was a pretty frightening thing. It was a lot of noise, a lot of dust, a lot of swirling. It was what you hear stereotypically, like a freight train coming. It's exactly what it sounded like. After all the dust settled, we all checked ourselves and nobody was hurt. There were about eight or nine of us there, because the rest of the folk had gotten the tornado warning and didn't come to church. But those of us who were not wise were there. Everybody was praying. Nobody was crying. And I mean, naturally you're fearful, but nobody cried at all. People just prayed. We just huddled together and prayed. Well, the things that we took from that experience and applied the next time was that if there's tornado warnings, we don't have prayer meeting. We don't have service. The next time it happened, I told folk, you can pray at home. That's what I learned from that experience. That there's such a thing as faith and there's such a thing as presumption. And I think it's presumptuous to challenge a tornado and say, "I'm going to pray." And so the one thing that we learned was that take the warning seriously. And I take responsibility for that, because on my way to church that day, it was bright, sunshiny day. The birds were singing and all of that. There was no sign of a tornado at all. And once we got in church and began our service is when all of a sudden the alarms came and it got dark and the wind started howling. But I mean, there was no sign of a tornado at all on the way to church. But I have learned my lesson. Well, the difference, to my mind, between faith and presumption, faith says that I trust God to bring me through whatever situation I find myself in. Presumption says I'm going to do something that's foolish and trust God to get me out of it. Okay, and that's not what God is asking for. If you want to look at it biblically, that is what the devil tried to do with Jesus. He took Jesus to the top of the temple and said, "Jump off," because God has promised to give his angels charge over you lest you dash your foot against the rock. And Jesus' answer was, "Get behind me, Satan." All right, because what he was doing is tempting. He said, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." So the point is that God expects you to use common sense.
Reverend Phelps gave us some important lessons today to know about being a safe member of our community when Mother Nature hits us. It's so critical to be weather aware. Make sure that you are paying attention, and when we all have smartphones, use the technology to protect you and your family and your church family. Be aware, make sure that you have a plan so that you know that you can be safe, you know where your children are, you know not to put your life at risk. Reverend Phelps learned the hard way that you can rebuild a building and a church, but it was critical for him and his church family to be safe and be together. Protect your family, be very weather aware.